So for me, DAT, digital audio tape, was the most unreachable format, and I've never had a DAT player or recorder, and they're always very expensive, and now the most desirable units, the Sony's several £100 on eBay, but I happened to see this one, an Aiwa, an XD-S260. It was sold as having a fault, occasionally chewing tapes, but I thought for about 30 quid I'd take a gamble on this, see if we could get it working. I'm hoping it's going to be a simple case of lubricating and cleaning the mechanism. We'll see. Obviously the plug needs replacing. That's seen better days, but of course I don't have any DAT tapes, so I bought one of those second-hand as well. Let's take it apart, lubricate it, clean it, see if there's any other faults, see if we can get it working. So I did a first test with the tape. It did load it and it did rewind it, but on eject it tangled up the tape. I managed to get it back in, pressing down these notches here. So it seems to be eating up the tape on eject. Now what you can do, if you load the drawer like that, these switches here, little tiny switches, you can fool the mechanism or the logic into thinking there's a tape in there. So you can actually activate the wind. That's the rewind. Finger out the way. So that's turning there. Okay, so that's fine. It's a bit noisy, but it's just turning. But the forward wind, I'll just go through that cycle again. It's reporting caution on the front. So what I think the problem is the take-up spool here never turns. So if you try to do fast wind, it just starts a little bit and then stops. It doesn't seem to continue. Interesting. And if you eject, it brings that mechanism back, but doesn't wind the tape. That take-up spool doesn't turn, so I'm thinking there's a problem there, that take-up spool not winding the tape back into the cassette before it unloads it is a problem. So, well, we're going to have to take this mechanism apart and see what we can find. So I've taken off the main mechanism and done a general clean on the guides and the drum, and removed some of the old lubricant here, and I'll reapply some later, and put rubber renew on the pinch roller here. So this band here, that's likely to fail at some point, but at the moment it seems quite good, so I've just put some more rubber renew on there. Looks like I would need to remove this here to get access to replace that, because you can't fit that underneath that cog. It doesn't look as neat and tidy as a good Sony unit. I mean, look at this strange board that's glued on there. That's very, very strange. And underneath, if I turn this around, I mean, there's an encased circuit there at a strange angle with a piece of foam stuck in. I mean, it's all about how you're doing. And back on the main board, you've got this strange board here. I'm assuming that's the bridge rectifier, and some heat sinking on the base. which is fine, but it's all a bit weird. And I mean these are fine. There's limited space in this form factor, so you'd expect some vertical boards perhaps, but you know, so all this strangely long cables just wrapped up here, and strange cables sort of tied up like that. Anyway, the next thing I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to take the front panel off in order to get to the circuit board behind it and get to the record pot. That will need lubricating and contact cleaning. You can't get at anything from the back, so that board is going to come off. Just some screws at the base should allow me to remove this, and then looks like I'll just remove some screws here to get at that potentiometer. So the panel came off and the circuit board comes off with 4 screws and plastic notches. You've got to be careful not to break them off, of course. Just a little bit of force jiggling, not too much. Nothing very remarkable on this side. Just kind of buttons and things are all a bit cheap, but I guess that's okay. So I'm going to clean this potentiometer, some strange white gooey stuff, or don't know what that is. So I'll get rid of that, clean in there with the contact cleaner, trusty contact cleaner there, and I'll probably for good measure just put some in the switch there, and put that back, and that'll be it for the front panel. So I'll just put the lubricating contact cleaner in the potentiometer, and it's moving much better. It was very stiff before, and it's certainly improved that. Just another note, it's not too bad on this one, but if there's any dust around the buttons, the button assemblies come out just like that, so you can clean those easily. I think this one comes out as well like that. There you go. So that's going to make it a bit easier. Just get rid of the dust, and that's it. So you may have noticed this grey material here that was sort of at an angle, strange angle before. So I took this all off, and this strange sort of power supplied board that's just got a bridge rectifier and 3 linear DC regulators. Obviously clamped down onto the bottom metal as a heatsink, just hooked underneath the hole here, and 1 screw. So I straightened it up and put it underneath. So I need to look at the circuit to see whether the regulators would be shorted out in some way. I assume not, because the main electronics seem to be working in terms of power, and there wasn't anything obviously power related that was faulty. But still, it wasn't in the right position. Very strange. I mean, it almost looks like somebody's been in before and tried to do something, left it like that. It seems unlikely that it would just work its way loose over time. But anyway, that's now in position. I did take the board, the main board, out here, and I mean it's all a bit, how you doing here? I mean, look at this. This is really weird. You've got various components. I mean, you sometimes see components on the underside of boards, but these are really big things, look like fusible resistors. And these strange breaks in the circuit board here. I mean, this looks more like a prototype than something you'd expect from a, production high quality unit. I mean, I think that's certainly one answer is it's not really a high quality unit. But yeah, it's all very sort of amateur hour, really. I mean, the strange thing is that some of the components actually do have holes marked on the other side. So this resistor, for example, it's marked on the board here, this side. So why it's ended up being here, I have no idea. But anyway, I mean, if it works, it works. I did spot this, whatever this is, 3-terminal something, is loose, and the PCB is coming up on the other side. so I'm going to have to desolder it and solder the points back onto there to make it firm, and maybe put a bit of glue on this front side as well. So that's a bit annoying, but I'll have to make that a bit more sturdy. Anyway, the board comes off. There's another connector underneath which is a bit hard to remove. So we've got another motor here which is driving the mechanism that moves the tape guides out, pulls the tape out. A little bit worrying that these plastic ones here are going yellow, but all the teeth seem to be intact, at least for now. This rubber belt is intact, but looks like it's aging, so I might see if I can get a replacement, or at least soak it in rubber renew for a few hours, see if it loosens that up, see if it can last a bit longer. Again, underneath here there's some lubrication points that I might have a look at, see if that needs cleaning. Now over on this underside of the board, again we see some point-to-point wiring here, not very elegant, but of more concern is the electrolytic capacitors here. They look like 22 microfarads at 10 volts, and I don't know whether you can see on camera, if I can get close up, they look like they've started to leak a bit, I think. Some kind of corrosion on the wires, so not very serious, it's not like gone all over the board or anything, but just early signs, or some signs of decay. So I think I'm going to at least take out one or two as a sample and check them. So I suspect these have probably gone bad or started to go bad. So yep, I'm going to do that, and there's plenty of space on this board underneath, so it won't be a problem to replace them with normal electrolytic capacitors. And if nothing else, that's another preventative measure, even if that's not the cause of a particular problem right now. I think it will be soon. I've taken one of those capacitors out, and you can see more clearly underneath it some crud that's leaked out at some point, and it's really no longer a capacitor. So definitely going to have to replace all of these. There's a mixture of 22s, 3.3s, and yeah, at different voltages. So I'll get some replacements and repopulate the board and see if that helps. I've just noticed there's another board here inside this shield. Possibly that's a preamp, a head preamp. Not exactly sure. That yeah, there's some RF, looking like RF cables coming out of it that are screened, so it's probably some RF preamp. So I'm going to take that out because there's often there's going to be electrolytics in there, and they're probably going to be degrading as well. So I'm going to have to work out how on earth to take that apart, because the screws are from the other side. Okay, do I have to remove these side pieces somehow? Yes, probably. Okay, alright, that's my next challenge. Alright, with the top chassis removed, you can get access to the RF board here. There's one screw, and you need to lift up and unplug the connector, and then you can get to the board. So it looks like there are 3 electrolytics here, those black ones, and they look okay. Don't look visually at fault, but I'm going to just measure them, check that they are still decent capacitors, and go from there. You can see I put everything back together again, and I have tried it a few times off camera. Initially it was giving me a lot of caution errors and not really playing properly. Seems to have settled down a bit after a few attempts replaying the tape and rewinding it and winding it and so on. I cleaned the little pogo pin things as well, again just in case there was some confusion from those. I don't know if that helps or not, but now if we try to play, you'll see the VU meters, the level meters, are now playing, and I've taken the audio out of it and checked it is playing and recording. Okay, so that's good. So I thought, well, that's pretty much fixed. However, if you look a bit more closely and do some fast winding, let me see, if I do that. Okay, so we're winding quickly and then go into play. You see the tape has spooled into the shell of the cassette, not out of the shell, into the mechanism, so there's no jam or anything, but that's it's not very good. Okay, so it's all within the cassette, so there's still a problem there. The brakes don't appear to be breaking the spool's motion, so I'll need to have a look at those felt pads after all. Maybe they're not touching and engaging properly. So you can just see there that the take-up spool hasn't stopped, and now actually it's gone into caution mode, so it must have detected a problem. So we're still not quite there yet. One thing I just wanted to say was the electroluminescent display here is looking a little bit old. It's reasonably bright, but it's not very even. The top of the triangle here in real life looks a bit darker, and the top of the analog display there is not so even, although on camera it looks perfectly bright. It looks brighter and perfectly even, which is interesting. But in general these displays do age, and there's really not much you can do about them other than get a newer display from a parts machine perhaps. Here's the mechanism open, and I'm going to have a look at the brakes. So we've obviously got this pad here on the take-up spool. It doesn't stop it turning, but gives a little bit of resistance. It's on this springy bar. Can't obviously see what moves it, if anything. So I don't know whether that's always in position. The feed spool has this felt pad that wraps around and is only going to touch if this feed here, this guide, gets pulled out with the tape, and then it gets taut around this spool here, which does indeed give some back tension, and I think that is going to adjust position and the amount of back tension. But to actually have something that stops both wheels from turning as you'd want from a brake, this mechanism here looks promising, and indeed there's a solenoid here which, when activated, moves this and this away. And so that's the kind of thing you'd expect from a brake operating on both wheels. Now, the underside of this nylon looks black, can't see easily, probably no more so on the camera, There's a bit of black speckling, I've removed some of it, that was on the metal chassis. So I think these are rubber pads. Interestingly or strangely, they seem to touch, if anything, the cog. And I can see on with the lens that there's some of the rubber on the cog teeth. So seems a strange way of doing it, to have rubber on plastic cogs. I mean, that's just bound to eat away the rubber, which may be indeed what's happened, because I mean, you can feel that there's not much resistance as it is. I think that is the brake though, because this solenoid here is marked as a brake solenoid here, and there's red wires to it, as there are visible here. So I think somehow I'm going to have to investigate what's underneath here, how to take this off and see whether those have just disintegrated, whether I can replace them. Maybe they've just got worn down so they're no longer touching. Maybe they were much thicker. Maybe it's as simple as that, assuming I can get some kind of replacement, or make some kind of replacement from some material I've got. So that's the next challenge. I've been able to carefully remove one of the nylon arms after removing the spring that goes between the two of them, and yes, you can see this rubbery thing stuck on the underside, and I don't know whether you can see on the camera, but under the lens it definitely looks flat on one side. Can you see the top side there? So it's obviously just worn down. So that will be a problem, and I'll need to see what I can do about that. Alright, so I had a few ideas on what to do to replace the rubber. Just after the last video, I tried to squeeze the rubber, and it actually just completely disintegrated. It would turn to goo, so clearly it was no good. So I just scraped it off. I initially tried some silicone, but it didn't really stick properly. It was lumpy. Maybe it was old, I don't know, but I gave up on that idea. I thought about wrapping some self-amalgamating tape around and building it up in a spiral. Then I remembered I'd got a whole bunch of these little rubber feet. I've had these for about 25 years. My dad got them. He was a bit of a dumpster diver, and found a bag of these at some point from an old electronics distributor near his house, and I've occasionally used them for projects as rubber feet that push into a hole you can drill. So what I did was use a knife and slice off the round dome and create a small cylindrical section. That then left me with the problem of how to create the hole. I tried just drills and poking things, but the rubber just expanded back and there was no hole left. So I then used soldering iron with a conical tip, if that will focus. Well, it's soldering iron, and just quickly poking each side a few times until the rubber sort of melted and created a hole with some gooey rubber that then got all over my fingers, but I was able to scrape it out and scrape it off, and I've ended up with a hole there, and it's looking, I think, quite good. You can see there it's quite well attached, it's quite firm. I think it's protruding out from the nylon adequately, but well, I won't know until I try it. So I'm going to fit this second one on the second nylon arm, and I'll give it a go. With those new rubber brakes, let's have a look and see how it behaves. I've got tape in there, and with a fast wind, let's see if it spools some tape out or not when we go straight into play. Well, that's pretty good. Let's try again. Let's do... Yeah, that's definitely breaking much better. And let's try rewind. Into play. There we go. That's pretty good. So I guess I'm just going to have to try it now and see how reliable or otherwise it is from here on in. Thank you for watching if you've made it this far.